Great. Thanks so much, David. I just want to say before we start how excited I am to be here with Ashley Shapiro, who's American Eagle Outfitters VP of Marketing, Media, Performance, and Engagement. Honestly, I think that every brand who's watching right now is going to come away from this conversation having learned something. And I feel that because Ashley has a really unique perspective on marketing leadership, on collaboration, and honestly, your team is on fire this year. American Eagle has had one heck of a year. So I'll let you introduce yourself. But first, hi, I'm Michelle Schroeder. I'm VP of Marketing here at Simon Data. Simon Data is a marketing technology company that just makes the right customer data available for the right tools and touch points. And what that does is free up marketers to make more and more effective experiences available and bring those to market. The bonus is that we also free up IT. We work with brands large and small, from your favorite direct-to-consumer subscription brands like BarkBox, Freshly, Blue Apron, The Farmer's Dog, as well as very large organizations like Fortune 500 financial institutions, major travel brands like TripAdvisor and Wyndham, to, of course, international retailers like ASOS and many, many others. All right, that was a lot of words. Ashley, I'm sure everyone would love to hear a little bit more about you, and then we'll get right into it.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Shapiro. I'm a brand marketer. I work at American Eagle. I'm truly a generalist when it comes to marketing, and I love to bring brands to life, really shaping that full customer journey, balancing love and growth and really leaning into innovation. My background really is all aspects of global brand and performance marketing, mainly in the retail sector, both luxury and more mass fashion. Prior to AE, I was actually a coach for about 10 years, where I focused on global expansion and positioning the brand as a global luxury leader, and before that, agency. But I'm really excited to be talking to you guys today about American Eagle.
Awesome. So your role, as I was like trying to memorize your title, it's got a lot of commas in it. It's really wide. And what struck me in talking to you is just how well blended brand and performance are on your team. Was this an organic evolution? Is this something that you've seen before in your career history? How did that happen?
I think, to answer your question, yes, there's a lot of commas there, but I think that the evolution was organic in the sense that it represents the evolution of how Gen Z consumes. It's seamless. There's boundaries. They do not exist. So imagine a world where since the day you were born, you had something, one small thing, that allowed you to all the time, 24/7, explore, learn, connect, listen, and shop. That's what I just described as this. Because of that, it's why my role exists and why it is one role, I think, and why it works for us, because it is really aligned with that experience. I think that if you want to acquire customers, you shouldn't just acquire a customer for your price tag. You should acquire a customer because they love you for your brand, which means, or your product actually. But those two things, brand and performance, are always going to kind of be dancing. And I was talking to my team the other day, and the brand team was on the phone and the performance team was on the phone. And I said, it's kind of like you cook and you do the dishes. Meaning, the brand team kind of picks them up and then the performance team converts them over. But it really, I think, is representative of how the world, or at least Gen Z, consumes brands today.
Love it. It's funny, you describe the cooking and the doing the dishes. This is very much true in my household. If I cook, my husband does the dishes. If he cooks, I do the dishes. So it sounds like we're describing a little bit of a love affair, or that real relationship. And in order to create that relationship with your clients, you've got to have it internally. You've got to have that collaboration. And so from our perspective, like something that we hear as a side effect of our product is that there's better collaboration between IT and marketing, between retention teams and acquisition teams, CX support. They just have more visibility into what their customers are doing. And it just floors me, despite your size and your global footprint, your team is hyper collaborative. How do you do that? And how do you maintain it?
It is hyper collaborative. I attribute that collaboration to a few things. Number one, this is the best peer group, and I'm not just saying it, that I've ever worked with, hands down, in my professional career, no matter what level I was at. We have very different strengths. We bring different things to the table. We know it, we respect each other, and we love each other personally and professionally. And I think that type of collaboration really trickles down throughout the organization. If you see a leadership who respects each other and understands how partnership can make things stronger, that is something that your team is going to take with them. I also said the word respect. I think it's critical to strong collaboration. The other part of it is really about being nimble. I mean, as you said, we are very big. We are a Titanic. We are the number one, jeans brand in the US, and we are global. We operate in 47 countries, but we move like a jet plane. And COVID certainly, I think, put that into play even more so. It united us. It put us at a level playing field with our customers, but also amongst each other. Everyone was in the same boat. No more was someone sitting in a cube, just to give a very literal example, and somebody else was sitting in an office. We were all sitting in our homes talking to each other and being afforded the same ways to connect to each other and collaborate, no matter what your level was, what team you were on, or any of that. So I almost feel like it elevated the collaboration and it made it more possible, as counterintuitive as that sounds.
No, not at all. I get it. And hearing the themes of respect as being sort of the underpinning of that collaboration. Yeah, I mean, do you have any advice for brands that are looking to sort of foster more of that collaboration, but are struggling with it, either through COVID or just generally?
I think number one, which sounds so basic, but hire good people. Hire people who want to collaborate. Hire people who respect one another, who are happy to stay humble.
Yep.
Hire people who listen, no matter what level they're at. Listening is really, really important, and always be nimble. I think that's the other key piece that, especially because we work with Gen Z, but even beyond that, in an organization, no matter what you were doing the past year in your personal life and your professional life, if we would have asked each other, oh, did you think you'd be doing the brand Innovators sitting in your dining room? No, we would have said absolutely not, right? So I think this idea of being nimble and being surrounded by people who really want to collaborate and who really respect each other, those things all have to happen in order for it to work. Without all of those things, I think you can't collaborate well.
Yep. So when we were speaking earlier, you said that your team's North Star is basically what Gen Z feels and says about you. And it's paying off big time. I think I heard you say that AE is the #1 jeans brand for men and women from ages 15 to 25. One challenge we hear a lot is how difficult that generation is to get their attention, to keep pace with sort of how their digital buying habits are evolving. How do you innovate at the pace of Generation Z?
Yeah. They are the largest generation, to your point. They're evolving every day. Technology is moving almost faster than that. And our job, to your point, if we want to reach that North Star, is to make sure we're the most relevant present brand out there. It's about showing up in the right way, at the right time, with the right content. That's our job. That's the core of my team's job. You have to listen. And I know I just said that earlier, but I'm going to say it again. You have to listen, and you need to understand your customer. You need to eat and breathe Gen Z. You should not be showing up with the side part like I have. You need to have a middle part. If you want to talk to Gen Z, I'm seeing it right here, right? You need to really show up as a Gen Zer, and you need to listen to them and reflect them. And an example that I had shared with you, I think when we spoke the other day, was, for me, if I was shopping for jeans, I would be very happy to receive a jean guide pamphlet in the mail that said, if you want it to be tight in the waist and you want it to have a skinny bottom, buy these. And if you want to flare, buy these. And I'd say, oh, great, now these are the jeans I'm going to buy. Because that's how I grew up, or I would go into a store and that's how I consume. I would go into a store and I would see a giant billboard and it would explain to me what to buy, or talk to the associate. If we think about Gen Z, social is their #1, and I will once again show everyone my iPhone, is their #1 source of education. It's their #1 source of everything, right? So we took a traditional jeans guide and we built it on Snapchat. That is where our customer is, and that is how they consume. So when I say you need to eat, breathe, and sleep them, you need to take what you want them to learn, what you want them to understand, what you want them to feel about your brand, and translate it into a way that they want to consume content so it's engaging for them.
Yeah, there seems like over the past year, AE's done some stroke of genius campaigns between the partnership with Addison Rae, the holiday campaign from last year, this jeans guide on Snapchat. I mean, I would have loved to have been in the brainstorming room, but since I wasn't and since our listeners weren't, how did it come together and what made it so successful?
Well, Addison is a superstar. We know that across all, I mean, that's hands down. So let's start with that. Let's not pretend we didn't know she was a superstar. She is. She has over 115 million followers on social. She is the #2 most followed person on TikTok. But when we met Addison and we started to engage with her and talk to her, she really was a regular kid. Mm-hmm. Addison loved American Eagle. They were her favorite jeans, even before she became 115 million followers. She loved to dance. She loved music. She loved to express herself. And I remember the first call that I personally had with her, it was hard to remember that she was a superstar because she was talking about it like, I have so many American Eagle jeans in my closet, blah, 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 blah. So we really just felt that she already had such a connection to our brands that it was a very, very easy and authentic and organic fit. And then, of course, because she was the TikTok superstar and is the TikTok superstar that she is, and we cater to Gen Z, she already had a connection to our brand. So it was a little bit of both, I would say. It was a little bit of brainstorm. It was a little bit of meant to be. I would say all the stars aligned.
Yeah. And this is kind of a silly question. And I think I know the answer based on what you just said, but how much of that partnership or even some of these campaigns are based on, gut, like she's a superstar, we should partner with her if we can, versus data, like our target demographic is here. This is what the buyer journey could look like. This is where they'll fall in love with us. This is where they'll purchase.
I would say I think any good partnership or even decision isn't solely based on either of gut or on data. Some people might argue and disagree with me and just be data focus, but I think that's the magic of marketing. With that being said, there is data. You need to understand their followers. You need to understand their relevance. There needs to be focus groups. There needs to be brand safety. Let's be honest, right? That's another thing anytime you're partnering with somebody. So I think it's a combination of that emotional connection and the authenticity of the partnership with that person, because you're basically, when you think about these influencers, they're brands. Yep. So you want to partner somebody who reflects your customer, but also reflects your brand and their values. So I would definitely say it's a combination of both, but the data is there. Of course, you need to do your homework always, always, always.
Totally. And you talk about sort of Gen Z being, having a phone from the moment they could. They can sniff out inauthenticity faster than any other generation.
100%.
Yeah. I want to go back to collaboration for a minute.
Sure.
And also that intersection of brand and performance, because it's something that we're always hearing, that there's a push and pull between those groups. And then a third group, of loyalty and a push and pull that happens there too. So your team straddles too between brand and performance. How do you guys think about loyalty? Are they in the room?
So there is a retention team, and it is led by my counterpart, Melissa Halverson. And to show you how collaborative those two teams are, we are actually called Mashley. That would be Melissa and Ashley combined together. Because it got to a point where people were kind of like, do I ask Ashley or Melissa? We'll just email Mashley. And that's sort of what ended up happening, because our teams and she and I were so tied at the hip and collaborative. So they must be collaborative. It's sort of a perfect question, but yes, we're very connected.
What, do you guys have an email alias yet that's like Mashley at American Eagle?
We don't, but we ended up having to share an office due to space constraints pre-COVID, and we did have a little Mashley nameplate, and I hope it's still there when we get back.
That is incredible. So between the Mashley and your team, does data ever help unite the three of you, the three distinct areas?
Yeah, I mean, it's more than three. It's actually, sorry to correct you, but it's really all of them, because Melissa, her world is really loyalty, CRM, email, as well as sort of our insights. And then my world really covers that media, performance, social, PR, and talent. So it really merges it all together, and data does unite us, because one of the most interesting things to understand is, how, in terms of how we acquire customers, which is a lot of what my team is really tasked with, you want to understand what channels are acquiring them, but then what's the lifetime value of them? Sure. What are they purchasing? What sort of products are we acquiring them on versus what are the products that are retaining them? And it's such an interesting story to watch, to understand, let's use an example. So if you were to acquire a customer at an affiliate versus you were to acquire a customer through an Addison Ray partnership, what is the journey of those customers? What is their lifetime value? And how do you then retain them and serve them up with content? The second piece of that puzzle is really about the content. And the data piece, I think, isn't necessarily a new story from innovation, I don't think, but the content piece is. So an example for us is we are very involved in the gaming space. Gaming is the #1 passion point for men 15 to 25. So that's something that we love. It's a place where we want to be present, that we're pretty active in. So if you think about it, if you acquire a new male customer through a gaming partnership, like our collaboration with PS5, then once they come into our brand, you want to make sure that you're still serving them up with content and messages that are meaningful to them. Because otherwise, that authenticity that you spoke about earlier, it's sort of like, you took me on this really nice gaming date, but then you brought me home and you served me flowers. I don't like flowers in movies. I like gaming. So I think that partnership, almost to some degree, is even more interesting in terms of how we speak to each other and how we collaborate than the data piece, which we all know and love and we need to do our job well. But I find the content piece really, really interesting, because I think it's something we can all associate with and we can tie back to other journeys we've had with other brands.
Has the team had to change at all or adapt to support these content needs? Because basically, to have them come home and feel at home, you've got to have a whole lot of content that supports, what they're interested in.
I would tell you that every person on this call would say that content is, we've never as marketers needed more content. And it's not just more content, it's platform native content. Yes. You can't be serving up the same thing on every channel. I actually, I saw a meme come up the other night. I was personally scrolling through social, and it said, do you understand what it does to me when you post the same content on Facebook and Instagram? And you can just associate with that so much as a marketer, but also on a personal level. So yeah, but the reality is, if we think about the world today, every single person, also known as literally almost every person that we market to, every Gen Zer, is a creator. Yeah, they have the capability to create content. So I think in terms of content, if we go back to, even 5 years ago, the sources of content and the choices you had were very different than today. You can pull out content. I can go outside and shoot some content, take my jeans off right now and take a flat lie. I will not. But there's people who are much better than that. But I think that it has created a different content funnel that I think all marketers, all marketing organizations are constantly having to evolve and adapt to.
100%. So even on the B2B side, where content, just like you're saying, it's never been more important. We've never seen higher engagement ever. I mean, the amount of people that will come to a webinar, download a guide, who want to actually come engage and learn with you is higher than it's ever been. But does that translate into an intent? Does it translate into a sale? That's the data that we can no longer trust. We can no longer say, okay, at this point, this conversion is meaningful. Is it similar for you and for your brand?
Yeah, I think you actually coined it really well for me when we spoke last time. I talk about a love affair. You said it much more eloquently than I did. But there is a love affair that people need to have with brands. And that's very different than the love affair that used to exist. So if we use, and not saying the old love affair doesn't exist, but it's slightly different, meaning you might have walked around a mall and seen a store, looked in the window, passed by. The next time, maybe you looked a little closer. The third time you went in, the fourth time you purchased. That journey can still exist today. But the reality is now there's so many other touch points that you can fall in love with the brand. And I think the interesting piece about data and somebody like yourself and where you can shed light is it really brings to life the need for brand media. It needs to bring to life that there is a time lag, that not everything has immediate results. And I think that is such a critical, first of all, it is a celebration for all marketers around the world, a tremendous celebration for all of us who all of these years have been trying to explain to our finance partners why we need above the line marketing. Like,
yes,
we told you so. So I think that's number one. It's a celebration. But you can prove the fact that you can't have one with the other. As I said earlier, nobody falls in love with a brand because they got a really good price. You don't remember brand because of that, right? You remember because of all the other ways that you engaged with it. They share your values. You love them as a brand in terms of what they do, that you love their product.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the data piece is just, again, a celebration for marketers, because it shows how that full funnel is really what makes brands successful, not one thing. It's every person on that team, that collaborative team, that makes a brand great and successful.
Love it. So something that you touched on there, and something that we talk about all the time as a data company, the beginning of COVID, we found ourselves in the position of telling all of our prospects and clients, stop looking at historical data. It's no longer relevant. Even internally, like I said, about our content funnel and our buyer journey, just wasn't relevant to compare it to the past. And then now we're learning at buyer behaviors at really an unprecedented rate, and they're changing again. They're changing all the time as things start to open up. What challenges do you have around data right now, and how are you thinking about solving them?
I think the biggest challenge for me personally right now is very similar to what you just said. We all as retailers do an LY comp. Everything is an LY. And how do you compare to a moment in time where maybe all of your stores were closed, or some of your stores were closed? You were 100% digital business. The world is not back to 2 LY, but the world is not LY. I mean, 2 LY, who even remembers 2 LY? Like that was like another lifetime ago, right? That was pre-masks. No one even knew what a mask was. If I said a mask, you thought I was talking about Halloween. So I think that figuring out what your metrics for success are and what your comparisons are as an organization, and everybody's leadership team will create those benchmarks and decide what's right for them ultimately. But I think that it is a little bit of a tricky situation to be in, especially I think for, some of the more analytical marketers. If I even look at my performance team, when they see the LYs, it really just messes with their brain. They can't get past it. But you're not going to see those traffic numbers maybe, or maybe you will, I don't know. But I think that's an interesting thing for us to do, is what are the benchmarks today? And in such a, I don't want to use, we live in an ambiguous world. This week and last week can be so different. And if we've learned nothing else, it's that. And in different parts of the country or the world even, they can be so different. So I think it's really important for us to all just be thoughtful about what the success metrics that we're holding to ourselves, and think about it in a new light, and be humble and live in the now.
Do you think so? You mentioned something earlier about it being a celebration, like a lot of this change and this ability to sort of show this long tail, journey that is based on a love affair that you're building step by step. Do you think that the collaboration you're having with finance, the collaboration, not the collaboration, but the relationship your team is having with this LY problem that I think everybody is experiencing, will change? Do you think the model will change, and there'll be maybe more innovation around the way that we think about marketing and the leeway that we give the team to do what they do best?
I do. I think that this is a personal opinion. It is not supported by anything real. I think that, as marketers, I think that you always need to have a plan, but there really is no plan. It's constantly evolving all the time. Whereas I think that we used to plan so far out. I think that timeline is getting crunched. And I think the collaboration with finance is allowing you to feed the business based on what's happening in the macro environment as well. So I think that collaboration is really important, because they've started to understand the power of marketing, I think. And if you can there's things that you can do in real time in marketing that we used to not be able to do. I mean, back to our content conversation we just had a little while ago, you don't necessarily always need to do a full production shoot where everyone was planning further out. You're not running print media anymore. You don't need to book it 3 months in advance. You could book some Facebook Advertise this morning and have it go live this afternoon. So I think that it'll evolve the timeline potentially, and maybe, again, maybe gone are the days of annual operating plan planning, and maybe it becomes quarterly. I have no idea. I'm not a CFO, nor would I ever be one. But I do think that there is something to this idea of time and being a little bit more nimble in real time that might evolve.
Yeah. I mean, there's a narrative, a running narrative here at Simon, that really marketers were the heroes of the pandemics for their brands. You know, this digital transformation that had to happen immediately, all the reasons it had to happen, you know, all the real-time data demands that we've had to answer because marketers were saying we need this now in order to keep things going. I mean, to me, it's again exactly what you said. It's a celebration. So
you gotta applaud those supply chain crew, though. I mean, those. I don't know. They might trump the marketers on that one a little bit, but I agree with you. The marketers,
they came through in a huge way. So you've set the bar, and your team has set the bar incredibly high for this year. How much pressure is there on you to keep it up?
You don't get to be best in class social for Gen Z without pressure. I will say that. And, you know, we always talk about glitter and sparkle and the exciting stuff. And there definitely is pressure to keep it sparkly and glittery. But with that being said, I think the real pressure is you're setting the tone for future generations. I think it was something like 20 million Gen Zers were able to vote this year on the election. You're speaking to those people. I mean, we have a very big audience. We have very high awareness. We have a lot of channels. We have a platform and a responsibility to set the tone and speak to that audience in a way that holds us accountable and responsible for our actions. Those will be doctors and lawyers and marketers and presidents and moms and dads and all of that. And I think that is some of the pressure to some degree, but the other pressure that I think exists is there is a team that is working to make all of this glitter. So I think that there's also a lot of pressure to keep your team engaged, to keep your team balanced, to keep your team happy, to keep your team sleeping, right? I mean, earlier we talked about Gen Z and innovation and the pace of that. It is a full-time job to stay abreast of what's going on. I can't tell you how many times I'm in social calendar reviews and I say, what does that word mean? I don't even know what that means. You know what I mean? There is an art to that, and that pace and that excitement and innovation. So I think there's also a pressure to manage your team to make them feel that balance, because it's a lot, right? It's a lot, but it's something to be proud of. And I think it's also a pressure. I mean, I could speak for myself that I sort of love. I don't do well with idle time, but it's all good things. But that balance, I think, is really important, especially as you have a team. And, you know, when you do something great, you want to do something great again.
Yes. So final parting question,
Sure.
Any advice for brands that are trying to build and bake in that balance within their teams while they're also trying to keep raising the bar as you have?
It's hard. I would say listen. And that's been a theme a lot of this conversation. I think listen, and this idea of empathy that, you know, I've actually spoken about before at Brand Innovators, I think is really relevant, and it's something that we should all remember. So I would say push, listen to your customers, but also listen to your teams. I say it a lot, hire Gen Z.
Yep.
Your best, again, don't show up to talk to Gen Z with the side part, even though I'm sitting here doing it.
So much better though.
I know, it looks so much better.
I love side parts.
I know, I love side parts too. Even my hair cutter said to me, side parts look better on everybody. But whatever, Gen Z, you do your middle part, I'll do my side part. You know, hire Gen Z, listen to Gen Z, listen to your team, be present. And you can almost say the words that I said earlier about Gen Z, be present, be relevant, be nimble, should be the same way that you interact with your team. be present. This circumstance that we're in allows you the capability to Slack or Jabber or whatever your company uses, every person on your team, just to check in, see how they're doing. You have no idea what's going on behind that Zoom camera, and it's hard. So I would say balance the pressure and the success with the fact that behind all of those cameras are real people with dogs and cats and kids and moms and grandparents and all of those fun things.
Awesome.
Be a person. That's actually it. Just be like a nice, normal person.
Yeah, which is easier said than done for some teams, but I think I found, at least, leading a team virtually. I started at Simon right at the top of the pandemic, so never met my team in person. But in some ways, it made it easier to make sure that you're connecting with everyone and that you're giving everybody your full attention. When you're speaking with them, you don't have sounds of the office kind of buzzing around, and you can really have these personal one-on-one connections with people and really get to know them as folks in their own homes. So we got to questions.
I talk on the phone now too. I mean, that's another thing. I talk to people on the phone, which I never used to do.
Well, and I find people open up more on the phone than they do, in these very formal feeling Zooms.
Agreed.
So we're getting some questions from the audience. This is a great one, and one that I also wanted to ask. What type of revenue does an influencer generate? How are you measuring the success of the Addison Ray partnership?
So I would not look at the Addison Ray partnership, to be honest with you, in totality in terms of success, although I do deem it very successful. Every initiative and everything that you do has different success metrics tied to it, which goes back to what we just said before about the love affair. You don't want to go off telling your finance partner that every time you do an influencer partnership, you're going to generate incremental revenue. With that being said, if you have the right person, what you put on their body will sell.
Yes.
The reality is Addison has tremendous reach. She is very authentic to our brand, and she looks great in our clothes. She makes our product look great, and that sells. So there is definitely an element of product sell-through. If we're looking at hard metrics, there is, of course, traffic to site. Mm-hmm. There's engagement. There's follower growth. There's acquisition of new customers. So I would say it's several things, and depending on the initiative, I would weigh them differently. But of course, as marketers, you need to market your marketing. And I'm not trying to be tricky in saying that, but if you're speaking to your finance partner, your merchandising partner, they're going to be very interested on that product sell-through piece. That will be a key metric for them to understand. Whereas amongst some of your marketing peers, we are going to understand the value of engagement, the value of brand love, the value of traffic to site, even if it doesn't convert on the first try. So I would also say to look at your KPIs, know your audience, and make sure that you're managing expectations. And know that the first time you partner with them, it may not convert, right? Don't forget about the dance and the love affair.
Love that. And I love the call to market your marketing. Something that I think we all learned this year, defending the budgets, which was not an easy thing, but it's necessary. It's a necessary component for growth.
Agreed.
So we got another question about Gen Z. Big surprise. So you've got this global footprint, American Eagle Outfitters. It's not something that I knew. I've been a long time AE customer, though when I was more in the Gen Z age range. The jeans all still work. That said, how does that change the way that you're marketing to Gen Z abroad, not just American Generation Z? Are there nuances and differences between those groups?
Absolutely. So as I said earlier, we are very much a global brand. We operate in 47 different countries. I no longer handle international at American Eagle, but I did. That's actually how I joined the brand, and then did that a lot at Coach. So this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. There are nuances. I think that what I would say is, and I'm going to give an example of actually that something happened in my past life that I think is very indicative of the variances in different countries and how trends evolve based on where you are. I was working at Coach. I was in the UAE interviewing media and PR agencies for a pan-Arab strategy that would spread across the region. And one of the agencies said to me that in Saudi, during Ramadan, that YouTube watching peaked at its all-time high, and that we need to get in the YouTube game. This was years and years ago. I came back and I started doing my homework. We weren't doing anything really on YouTube. It was kind of being used for internal content, and started doing our homework, and it ended up being a tremendous opportunity for paid and organic content, the idea of pre-roll. What that says to me is not only is it about when the platforms and the trends arise, but it's also about seasonality. Ramadan's in June, which in a historical sort of fashion calendar at the time, June was a very low month in terms of what you would be doing in terms of spend because it could fail. But there you had a candid audience of people sitting at home watching your content. So I would say, yes, 100%. You need to be locally relevant in terms of your content, in terms of your channels. People do not adapt in different geographies to new technology and innovation and social platforms at the same times, and seasonality varies. So it definitely affects things, and you should be globally consistent but locally relevant.
Yep. Yep. Love it. Another question, similar vein, which is just how do you evaluate the technology that you advertise on? So Clubhouse being, an emerging thing. I don't know how much Gen Z is involved, but how do you think about new channels and new opportunities to engage with that generation?
I really love that question, Michelle. And the reason why I love it is just because something's new and shiny and sparkly doesn't mean it's right for your brand. As we said earlier, Gen Z has a great bullshit meter, and you shouldn't be on something that you can't play in an authentic way. Right content, right platform. So again, I'm going to use a terrible analogy. 40-year-old soccer mom should not be on TikTok. She shouldn't, no offense, but she shouldn't, right? So what I'm saying to you in that example is it might be a new technology, it might be new and innovative, and your audience might be there, but it might not be a brand fit. So you need to really balance those things all the time so your brand's showing up authentically. If you show up in the wrong way, it's almost worse, I think, than like not showing up. I'd rather not show up than look.
And this is why having brand and performance sort of married in this one role, someone who's thinking about risk, but also opportunity and blending it really well is so critical. It's something that I've loved as a theme in all of our conversations. Yeah. It's really incredible. And I don't know if, it just strikes me as very unique and really well done at AE. So
thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. It was so fun talking to you.
You as well. I think we have 20 more seconds. So I do have one last question, which is just what are you most excited about right now that you guys are working on or that's coming up for you?
Oh my gosh. David, sorry, I'm getting my final question about what I'm most excited about. You're muted.
I took advantage of your non-presence.
I heard the beginning of the question, but I didn't hear the whole question, but I'm excited for the answer nonetheless.
It was going to be for David to come on.
No.
Honestly, a few things. So one, I'm really excited about our men's gaming strategy. It's such an interesting space. It's interesting because our guy is so engaged with it, but also it's such a new space. It's so much fun to learn about and discover. And I think as marketers, anytime we can discover a new space, it's really interesting. I think the second thing that I'm really excited about is to understand what the future landscape of retail is. Stores are on fire. We all thought, I can't tell you how many, in my PR role, I can't tell you how many questions we answered. Is the mall dead? The mall is not dead. Everyone loves going to the mall. So I think that I'm really excited to see what the future of retail looks like, how stores evolve into more experiences, what happens with social commerce, and it's just endless.
I love those topics. We've done a ton on gaming, hosting different private roundtable discussions, all esports and gaming. It's one of the hottest topics we get questions about all the time for our community. I can tell you right now, we have our Future of Media Summit coming up at the end of the month. I know Jill Toscano, who's the head of media at Walmart, is going to be talking a lot about social commerce and that content to commerce evolution. So might be some good material there to learn from. But these are fantastic topics. I love it, Ashley. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Of course. And Michelle, amazing job, moderating this discussion. So I learned a lot, and I hope our community did too. So with that, I'll